So I have two salient memories of last year at Rubyfuza. The first was how excited everyone was to start receiving their salaries in Bitcoin. And the other was me sitting at the back there trying to figure out how change sets work. And change sets are basically the active record instance equivalent in Elixir. So that was really the start of the process. It started right here, me trying to figure out how the database query, or the query system for Elixir works with the MySQL database. And this is basically a presentation of that journey, how we got from there, from the 1st of February last year to where we are now. I'm Raoul, obviously work in software. I'm not really on social, so I've got an email address if you would like to get in contact, or just come and chat afterwards. Okay, so what is Karri? Karri is an app where we collect small amounts, typically small amounts, from members of an organization, typically a school, either from the members directly or on behalf of the members from somebody else, the parents typically. So to give you examples, Civies Days or Valentine's dress-ups, 10, 5 Rand that kids have to pay, we collect those amounts instead of parents having to bring envelopes of cash to the school. And school trips to the aquarium, something like that, rugby tours, for those kind of things, we load those onto the system, and then the parents can pay on behalf of the kids directly. It reduces the admin load for the schools dramatically, and it also obviously makes it safer because cash is a big issue these days. So are there any parents around? Okay, do you guys use the Karri app? I know one person already. Okay, so we've got some people who already use the app. Okay, fantastic. Yeah, cool. So where did this all start? So Karri version 1 was built 2016, 2017. And by the end of 2017, the platform had started to grow to more than 10,000 users, and more than 100 organizations were on the system. So certain things started to appear in the old dotNet system or app. And so it's all important to mention there's an Ionic mobile app, and then there's the backend app and the administration portal, which was basically the dotNet Chash app. So we started to encounter some issues, and that's where the whole process started. And yeah, so something weird was going on. And the beast was starting to get a little bit unruly. You know, it was doing things that weren't really expected, and something needed to be done. And at some point, so Doug, the CEO of Karri, he made the decision that we need to chuck the MVP and start and rebuild from scratch. As somebody mentioned previously, that this is a hard decision. So the previous app had only been running for a year. It was basically just finished in terms of development. And now the scale was at a point where it was just unmanageable. So you can only imagine this is an excruciating decision to throw away 2 years worth of work and to start from scratch, just when you think you're going to start recouping some of your investment. So that's when the process started. And two parents, actually, so we two parents who built the system. We were at the Grove as one of the first schools to implement Karri. And we're both software consultants, and we came on board. Okay, so that was Julian Dix, and myself. So we were the team who started to build the backend application and the administration portal. So the backend application was also the API for the mobile app, and at the same time there was a person who was rebuilding the mobile app for Ionic. The first one was Ionic V1, and then we moved that up to later versions. So we started, and that started basically, as I said, 1 February last year. So as you know, when you start to program and functional programming, things get a little bit weird. You know, it gets quite awkward and strange and unexplainable. And that's the thing about Elixir. It really, it gives you a false sense of security, and then suddenly things get really, really odd. And but I'm happy to report that Phoenix makes this a lot better. So we knew from the start that Phoenix was a winner. And but what was really amazing about it was that once we got over that initial functional learning curve, it started to become familiar very, very quickly again. So there are templates, and there are views, and there are controllers, and Phoenix really allows you to to focus on the business logic. So if you guys have seen any of the Elixir presentations before at this conference and other conferences, you'll see people talk about the agent pattern, supervisors, gen servers, things like that. And those are all the great, fantastic advanced functionality that Elixir brings. Luckily for you, when you start out with Phoenix, you don't really have to worry about any of that. It is happening in the back end. Gen servers are being spun up, and some of those advanced patterns are being used. But you don't have to worry about that. You can get down to coding business logic. And in that way, I mean, this all must sound terribly familiar to all of you. This is really what Rails is all about, right? So we found that this was amazing, and you'll get productive really, really fast as long as you can just get over the learning curve in terms of a functional language and getting to know a functional language. Okay, so the process. So we were very lucky in that when we rebuilt the app, we had a team of people who understand what they wanted. There was a good business analysis analyst involved. She knew exactly which features weren't working on the existing platform and what they wanted for the new platform. So the business domain was extremely well understood and very well detailed and thought through. So that made our job really, really easy, actually, because they just had a list of things we needed to do, and we just got to work and built them. And yeah, I mean, it was such an amazing process, and I feel very privileged to have been involved in it. And I think it's very often that you get into this system where the business requirements aren't really that well understood, and it makes developers' lives really hard because you start iterating over things unnecessarily. So it was really great from that point of view. Okay, so now I want to come back to some really standout features that we encountered with Phoenix and with Elixir as well while we were building the new system. And the first is pattern matching in functional arguments. So this is really amazing. It's almost like some kind of type safety, but it also with almost good, really, really good precision. It allows you to pull out the parts of your incoming arguments to your functions that you need. So the first function, you can see there's a pattern matching, and it's the equal sign. So you know in Elixir, equals doesn't really mean equals. It's when you assign a variable, it means the same thing, but after that, you match between two things. So what it's saying there in the first is, you've got your connection object coming in, or your connection data structure, and you want to extract out of that a map, which is like a hash, and inside that another hash, and you're looking for the value of the current org key inside that hash. And then also on the second argument, there's out of the params, you want to extract just the ID. And if you do want the params available, you can specify it on the other side of the equal sign. And the second example is where you don't even do that. You're not cared about the connection data structure or the params map. You just want to extract out the current org and the ID, and that's all you're going to work with, and the rest gets discarded. So I think this was really, really interesting for us to see exactly, if you go back into your code, you know exactly what you're going to work with. You know why something is being pulled into the function, why the specific arguments are being passed. And we found this really, really helpful in terms of reading the code and understanding the code. The second thing I think that was really stand out is multiple function definitions. So you might not know this, but in Elixir, a function and its arguments are unique. So if you specify different function arguments with the same name, it's a completely different function. And you might think, well, this is kind of odd. Why is it so special? But it's really nice to be able to read through your code and know which functions are grouped together and pertain to a specific thing. So in this example, you've got, let's say maybe you have 6 functions that all have to do with fetching the rows. And they deal with certain things. That one deals with the row itself, the other one deals with a specific cell in the row, or there's some kind of data processing. But you don't necessarily want to make up fancy function names to kind of describe this whole process. You just want them all to have the same name because they're still there for the same purpose. So this was amazing for us. The second thing that was amazing was once you get used to this pattern matching and multiple arguments, you can really use that to eliminate decision trees. And as you can see, I mean, when we started out, we typically did what you see in the first function. We would almost in a Ruby kind of way write functions like that. And then we realized, well, if you really apply if you really write Elixir the way it's supposed to be written, you can just write 2 functions at the bottom, and you eliminate that whole block of code at the top is unnecessary. You just write 2 functions, and by passing in the atom, the type, into each, it will just run the correct function depending on which you pass in. So so what you end up doing is you end up eliminating a lot of case statements, a lot of if-else statements by using your function and arguments function. Well, the way that Elixir uses that correctly. So that was really amazing to us as well. And the third thing that was really amazing is obviously function piping. And I know a lot of people have talked about function piping here. And I thought maybe I should give a practical example of what that looks like. So here we have a collection. A collection is the event where we are going to be receiving funds from parents on behalf of the school and paying it out to them. Somebody creates one and then adds users, and then when you save this, this is the kind of code that you would typically see in the model equivalent. And it's really readable and understandable. You can see the process. We get it, we cast some attributes, we check if it's a donation, we cast some dates, we validate event dates, we validate collection dates, we look for some custom item label stuff, we cast some amounts, then we do a series of standard validations, which is a function exactly like this. It's got some more pipes in it. And then we set the original reminders. So I think it's just really readable, and you understand the process really well. If you compare this to having before action and after action and around action, it's just much easier for us to understand what's happening and what the code is really doing. So that was just amazing for us as well. Okay, the results. So we started working on the 1st of February, and we deployed both the back end and admin portal as well as the mobile app in April in the school holidays. And we had, I mean, if I think back at it, it's absolutely amazing that we could do that. It was just really, really something special. So by the time the schools came back from the holidays in April, the apps had been swapped out, and the mobile app the new mobile app was live, and the new desktop functionality and backend was live. And we saw very, very few issues. Yes, there were niggles with functionality that we hadn't implemented correctly. But all in all, it was just an amazing experience and an easy experience moving over to the Elixir Phoenix backend. Okay, so let's talk some metrics. So currently, when we moved the app over, there were about, as I said, the header for the talk says, about 69 users. Actual active users were probably around 40. That includes staff at the schools and teachers who use the system, as well as us in the office, and then the parents who typically use the mobile app only. So at the moment, and we did about maybe 15,000 transactions a month or so. Now we're at a point where at any 60-second window, there's 600 people basically using the app. All the schools with their back-end staff use the app. And yeah, I mean, so if we look at memory is really the amazing thing here. On Heroku, we've got 2 basic dynos. We don't even have fancy dynos. 2 512 megabyte dynos that are load balanced. And the memory usage is almost never above 256 megabytes. And if we look at the response times, so our 50th percentile is 5 milliseconds, and our 95th percentile is 200 milliseconds. So, I mean, for such a small cluster of servers, I think it's pretty amazing. And the thing just never falls over. The only time we can make it break is if we deploy... touch your word. Has almost never fallen over up to now. Okay, so we've had a few... what issues have we had? We've deployed bad code. Heroku has gone down sometimes, and we've run out of database connections in the database connection pool. So those are the only things that we've encountered, and during that whole process, the server just never goes down, up to now, which is just amazing. Yeah, and that's the kind of results we've been getting. But okay, There's always not so nice things happening. So there's two problems with this path that we've gone on. The first is that I don't know how you're going to find easily experienced Elixir developers in South Africa. And I think somebody's talked about it before. This is a known issue. Just isn't enough people around. So I think you need to consider, if you want to do this, you need to consider how you're going to work on your talent pipeline for supporting this platform. It's a real issue. The other thing is for beginners, and somebody else mentioned it as well, I think Stefan talked about that, there is no Stack Overflow. I mean, it's ridiculous. You Google anything and you get taken back to the API documentation. So, but luckily, that didn't seem to be such a big problem. It's just for beginners, I think it's just worth noting actually that, yeah, there isn't that much documentation out there for beginners. So in closing, I think it's well known that Erlang OTP Elixir has been applied successfully in the telecoms industry. And I think we're a living, breathing example at Karri that this platform is fantastic for transactional processing. And it's stable, it's fast. So if you need to keep balances and you need to move money between accounts and handle transactions, I think this is a fantastic system. So what I'm basically saying is, if you're in the fintech sector and you're looking at some kind of functionality to do with balances and transactions, I think Elixir has proved that it handles just as well as it would handle calls or messages in the case of WhatsApp. Cool. That's it from me. Any questions? Sure. C#, sorry. There you go. They've got a build pack. Yeah, we just use the stock standard build pack. Yeah, we didn't have to do much to get it deployed actually. And because we don't have such a complicated setup, the deployment is really a small part of our day-to-day work. Obviously, we monitor the servers, and we have also AppSumo looking into our logs. But yeah, our sysops is really, really simple actually. Any other questions? Sure. Yes. So we stayed on the MySQL database. The old app was on the MySQL database, and we stayed on the new database. We did build a pretty big migration to get some of the information across. I think one of the trickiest parts of that was getting the wallet balances right. So on one day, you had all the wallet balances on one system, and they had to be absolutely correct on the other system the next day. So that was a fairly big exercise going through, and there were some really interesting artifacts that we didn't really know what to do with them, but we solved them one by one in the first month, essentially, when we were on the new app. Sure. So we essentially came on board when the C# developers had already left. So we chucked the whole thing away, essentially. We started from scratch. The rules were very well understood and very well communicated to us, but we built the whole thing from scratch. We didn't even look at once the decision had been made, we didn't look at the old code base again. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Why did you guys choose Elixir? I know if this is a question for Leonard, tell me. Why did you guys choose Elixir and Phoenix coming from a C# background when a C# philosophy would imply that you would probably go to something that's tried, tested, and been around for 10 or 15 years like Rails and has a good thing and go to something completely, I mean, it feels like you went from C#
Yes.
to a very fluid and flavor of the day. Sorry, I apologize about
No, it's a good point, yeah.
compared to Rails?
Yes. So we actually Rails developers, and when we took over from the C# people, um, another consultant had come in and had built a small experiment just to see what it would be like. And that experiment looked really, really good. Even to us when we came in and had a look at the code and how it worked and stuff, and we were really impressed. So we made the call to essentially say, well, this seems like it's going to work for us. We read up a lot. We read up a lot on most of you have probably read the article about Bleacher Report, which is one of the biggest production Phoenix apps, and what kind of experiences they've had. And so there were enough case studies for us to reliably say that this probably will work out quite well. The only thing we didn't know is, we didn't know how much we would struggle because there's so little documentation out there. But having said that, the dependency system in Elixir is very similar to the one in Rails. There are dependencies for all the big things that you want. There are dependencies that you can bring in for emailing, for background workers with Redis, for monitoring, and for all kinds of things. For internationalization, for currencies. There's great dependencies, and they are super stable. That's the other thing. Another amazing thing is you get such great feedback during compile time. I don't know. I've never worked with Go or anything else, Rust, that goes through a compilation stage. But I just feel like you get incredible amount of information during compile time with Elixir, and that just makes your code so much better. Sure. We probably won't stay on Heroku forever, but it's serving us quite nicely at the moment, and our server costs are, insignificant. But at some point, sure, I'm sure. So the other thing is we're starting to grow internationally now. We're rolling out. Australia is already up and running, and North America is sort of looking like it might come on stream soon. So this will increase the problems that we have to solve, and we might need to look into something like that. Yeah, great.
So I'm a little unclear on the Phoenix app. Was it server-side rendered or was it a JSON API?
Okay, good question. So so for the mobile app, it's a JSON API. For everything else, for the support portal that the parents use and that the Karri staff use, it's a server-side rendered app.
Okay, and follow-up question: the Ionic app, did you maintain API compatibility with dotNet payloads and interface, or did you rewrite the Ionic app to speak to the endpoints?
Yes, we completely rewrote the Ionic app to speak to the Elixir endpoints. So they went live at exactly the same time. We pushed the Ionic app in, and we pushed the Phoenix backend in at the same time.
Was there a reason that you chose to not have backward compatibility with C# JSON API?
Sure. I must ask Julian. I wasn't very involved in the mobile app at that point, but yeah, I think what probably happened. I think that if I remember correctly, the difference between Ionic v1 and the subsequent versions was quite dramatic. So I think an upgrade path didn't appeal to us, for the mobile app, and we did need to change quite a few things on the mobile app. So we just decided to rewrite, and then when you're deciding to rewrite, then you might as well just rewrite for the new app, the new backend and administration portal that we put in. Cool. Yes. No, and I think that's very important. It's there. It's definitely there, and you can access it. But for our purposes, and where we got into it at that point in time, we didn't need to do it, and I'm really glad that we didn't need to do that, because that would have just pushed the complexity a lot higher. I think the one thing that I can really say about Phoenix is that it is fairly tolerant of bad code. And it's not like I write bad code or you write bad code, but when we write bad code, Phoenix is quite permissive. So in that way, it's very similar to Rails, I think. Yeah.
Are there any things that you miss from Rails?
Yeah, Stack Overflow. So, yeah, it's a good question. Not much, hey? I mean, we're at the point now that we don't need to, we understand the toolings quite well, so we don't actually need to, need support. I think the one thing though is, basically, if we want to further performance tune this application, let's say we go into 5 countries, we're dealing with a much higher transaction load. There's really only one consultancy that you can get to work on your Phoenix app, and that's Plataforma Tech, right? There is no one else. There's no one else with enough experience to take your Phoenix app to the next level other than Jose Valim. So, yeah, so I mean, that is one thing to consider, is that because it's a smaller ecosystem, your choices are constrained. That's a fact, yeah. Yeah, that's good to hear. It's good to hear other people are getting into the advanced stuff. We got the feeling that there weren't that many really, really advanced consultants around, you know, especially in South Africa. So, yes, so rewrite took, so as I said before, 1st of February, we didn't understand any functional. So it took us February, March, 2.5 months, basically, to rewrite the whole app. So I promise you, if you've got, so I disagree with Stefan, who says that if you're starting Elixir, it's probably better to not have any Rails experience. I think if you can just push through the functional weirdness, you will be super productive, very, very quickly, because you'll know how things sit together. Thank you, guys. Oh.